Welcome to National Affairs. I'm Tasha Carradine.
And I'm Rudyard Griffiths.
So Rudyard, do you feel like a bit of a rewind to the Olympics shipbuilding style? We've got 3 bidders out there for a massive contract, $25 billion at stake, to rebuild or to re-equip the Canadian Navy, the Royal Navy as it's now called. And we're waiting, standing by to hear an announcement. Are you on tenterhooks here waiting for this?
It's actually $35 billion.
35?
$25 billion for the naval ships. You
Right.
got $8 billion for a new set of Coast Guard ships. $2 billion left over. Some miscellaneous naval requirements of the Canadian government. You put that all together, $35 billion. This is the largest procurement contract, military contract
ever
in Canadian history. It's going down, and we're going to have the announcement on the show, in a matter of minutes.
So first, I think we should take a look at some of the
let's
contenders
take a look at some of the
here as they are. Bringing up our first, we've got...
Right, Irving Shipyards, very strong. You know, they've been in this business since 1892. They're really going after the big part of this contract, the $25 billion military naval ship piece, and they're in, the running. I mean, this is a company that has, again, deep roots, and let's face it, in Eastern Canada, need for job creation.
Yeah, and of course the other competitor here, the latecomer to this because the bid process was actually delayed to allow them to bid, was Davie Shipyard in Quebec. They were founded in 1825, and of course they also are acting in cooperation with Daewoo Shipbuilding of South Korea and Quebec's SNC-Lavalin. And they're helped out by a $19 million loan from the Quebec government. So lots of political capital, of course, in this procurement process as well, on the line for various governments.
That's right. Quebec City didn't get that stadium for the Conservatives.
Too bad.
Are they going to get a shipping contract? We're going to find out in, again, a matter of minutes. Let's go to the next board here. C-SPAN out of Vancouver. Very strong bid, supported by Christy Clark. Something like 132 boxes of material in their bid. They spent over $1 million on it. Christy Clark, is quite confident that they're in the running for the big $25 billion military ship contract. So it's a kind of battle right now, I think, between C-SPAN and Irving, and again, we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, let's take a look now at the National Press Theatre. There's a panel waiting there who will announce in just a few minutes who's going to win the multi-billion-dollar shipbuilding contracts. And as we said, we're going to have that announcement live on the show. But first, we're going to go to Ottawa as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to bring in our colleague, Mercedes Stevenson. We're going to keep that panel on the screen. Mercedes, tell us, what's the latest news? Ottawa has been a buzz about these contracts for the last week. Tons of speculation. What are you hearing?
Well, Rudyard, this is all everyone's talking about here in Ottawa today. It is absolutely the focus. The government being very careful to show that they have had a hands-off approach. We're hearing that as a part of this bidding process, they assigned it completely to the bureaucrats. They gave the different shipyards assigned letters, A, B, and C, so that nobody would actually know whose bid they were really looking at. And the bureaucrats then made this decision under the close supervision of fairness monitors and various consultants who were hired to ensure that the process was completely above board. Then the shipyards were called today. Then that decision was handed off to Rona Ambrose, and only at that point did government ministers, i.e. only Rona Ambrose, become aware of what the decision was, because this is such a political hot potato.
This isn't even the Olympics. This is the Oscars. The envelope, please, and nobody knows until you know. But why did the government go to such lengths to depoliticize this process?
Well, because this is the largest military procurement in Canadian history, it is so much money, it is so many jobs, it is so much on the line that the perception of there being political influence or undue influence in the process could be a huge problem for the government. And everyone remembers what happened with the Mulroney government and the CF-18 maintenance contract. It was supposed to go to the people who were out in Winnipeg. They had the best bid. It was pulled for political reasons and given to Quebec. That gave a ton of steam to the Reform Party. Stephen Harper's government paid a lot of attention to that, and they don't want the same thing to happen to them. But regardless, whoever loses today is going to be furious and probably will be calling a political foul.
Mercedes, why is this large contract, you said the largest in Canadian history, $35 billion, not getting the kind of public scrutiny and discussion, say, that the F-35s did in the run-up and during the federal election? Why the disconnect there?
Well, primarily, Rudyard, because this has just been kept so quiet. No one's really known what's gone on inside the process. It has been very closely monitored, and no doubt after the announcement is made, that's when you're going to see a lot of the scrutiny. And frankly, that's what happened with the F-35. There wasn't a lot of scrutiny before the decision was made because nobody knew it was coming. In fact, in this case, everybody knew the decision was coming, and there was a lot of discussion about it. But the scrutiny generally doesn't happen until afterwards, and that's when there'll be a lot of discussion about, well, how was the decision made? How was this bid split up? And that's when whoever the winners and losers are will start to have that debate.
Okay, Mercedes, we're going to stay live with our cameras there in Ottawa, waiting for this announcement to come down. Thanks for giving us the latest.
Thank you.
Let's go now to a panel of experts we've assembled to discuss this issue. We've got Tom Ring, he's Assistant Deputy Minister of the Acquisitions Branch of PWGSC, Captain Joel Parent of the Department of National Defence, and Greg Lick from the Canadian Coast Guard of Fisheries and Oceans Canada. Welcome to the show. I think we're waiting for our panel to come on. In the meantime, until we get them, Rudyard, you know, I think it's interesting what Mercedes was saying about the depoliticization, because the CF-18 issue was one of the biggest hot potatoes that the Maloney government had to deal with. And you know, while I see that they've offloaded to the bureaucrats, I hope it's more than smoke and mirrors. I hope it's more than simply an attempt to mitigate
part
appearances.
Of it, Tasha. What's also interesting is that, you know, the F-35 fighter was controversial because so many of the jobs were going to be outside of Canada. Now, what's happening here is that this is about jobs in Canada. So the public really hasn't reacted in the same way, because the perception is, hey, you know, this recovery is kind of uncertain, and if we're going to pump $35 billion into our economy to build these ships, which our Navy needs over the next 20 to 30 years, not a bad thing.
Right. I think we've got someone there in Ottawa. Why don't we take a listen to what's taking place at the panel?
Du processus d'approvisionnement concurrentiel qui a été utilisé pour choisir les deux chantiers navals qui construiront les gros navires du gouvernement du Canada. I am joined today by my colleague Tom Ring, Assistant Deputy Minister Acquisition in my department, le capitaine de vaisseau Joel Parent,
Captain of the vessel Joel Parent from National Defence,
Lick from the Canadian Coast Guard, Department of Fisheries and Ocean, as well as Brian Gear from Industry Canada, who's here on the left. Brian? Together, we represent a cross-section of the governance process that was put in place to design, implement, and oversee this procurement. I also want to introduce Peter Woods, our fairness monitor for the strategy.
Okay, we're listening. You can see there live in the box on your screen the panel, which is going to be revealing the decision today about the $35 billion in procurement for new Royal Navy ships for Canada. As we're waiting for them to get to the actual announcement, Rudyard, we were discussing the F-35s. You know, the controversy over that was enormous. I think that it's not just, though, in this case that the government's depoliticizing it to sort of, I think, move it away from the question of the Canadians' outrage at the huge price tag, but I think also the fact that there's this issue between cities and this rivalry that's happening. And, I mean, one of the parties is going to be left out in the cold. What's going to happen to them?
It could be, but they could also, you know, King Solomon kind of saw the baby in half here and say, hey, look.
You're comparing Stephen Harper to King Solomon? I love it. I love it.
You know, Vancouver will get a piece of this. Maybe they get the $8 billion Coast Guard. Maybe Irving and Halifax gets the $25 billion military frigate
But there's only
build.
$2 billion left.
And then what's up? But remember, Davies and Quebec did not tender for the full $25 billion. They're going for the smaller contracts. So they've in some ways already lowered expectations. But the rumor in Ottawa is that the Quebec members of the Tory caucus, that rump, has been pushing very hard on the Prime Minister, on his staff, saying you cannot leave Quebec out of this. This will be remembered. This shipyard is vital to Quebec City, and it needs to be resuscitated because Davies was in bankruptcy recently. They've only just come out.
And all the cities actually who are involved in this are lobbying, or all the provinces that are lobbying. BC was offering all sorts of goodies. Nova Scotia was offering training programs. The idea that this is apolitical is maybe a bit of an illusion, because people really were making an effort, as if it was the Olympics, to say our city or our province should get the deal.
Right. Well, let's bring in a panel. We've got a couple of experts standing by, Vice Admiral Peter Cairns and Diane Bernard, a business correspondent with Les Affaires in Montreal. Thank you both for being on the show.
Thank you.
Hi.
Vice Admiral, I want to start with you. Peter, what's your sense of how this could break out? Again, we're just waiting for the final word, but any guess here as to who's going to get what?
I don't guess. I just wait for them to tell us what's going to happen.
That way.
Come on, Peter, play along with me.
They're going to pick
Vancouver,
two
Quebec
shipyards.
City.
They're going to pick two shipyards. No matter which two they pick, they're going to be good choices. And I'm just sorry that one has to lose.
Deanne, in Montreal, what is the mood there? What are people saying in terms of this contract? If nothing does go to Davies, how big a political issue will it be?
I think it will be a political issue, but first it's a big economic issue. Minister Sam Hamad made no secret. He said that Davies deserved this contract. And from the Chambre de Commerce of Lévis, I've been tweeting with this afternoon with Jérôme Gaudreau, the director of the Chambre de Commerce, and he's very nervous and on his toes about what's going to happen if Davies doesn't get the contract. We're talking thousands of workers that have been out of work, which is the big issue. So I guess it's a political issue. If you brought back the arena last year, Quebec Arena, so it's a political issue, but first and foremost, it's an economic issue.
Peter, I want to come back to you just on the question of how this whole process has unfolded. We've seen an unprecedented distancing of the political leadership of this country from today's decision. Is this a new way of going about procurement, and is it a good thing or maybe not a good thing not to have elected officials involved? After all, they represent you and me.
It certainly is a new way of going about it. Appears to me to be incredibly fair. Will it be adopted for other procurements? I don't know. I think this is going to be the test case, but I think it's gone extremely well. Those who win, of course, where the stakes are high, will be very happy. Contrary to what my colleague in Montreal has said, I don't think anybody deserves this contract. I think each part of the country is in somewhat a similar state, trying to keep their shipbuilding and their shipyards alive. So it all comes down, in my view, to how well they responded to the request for proposal. That's what it's all about. They have looked, it's been marked. There's a fairness monitor who said it's been done fairly. And now we just have to wait and see how it comes out.
I'd like to ask you a more provocative question, though. Peter, why are we so bent on having this procurement in Canada at all? Why don't we go to China, for example, where we could get this at a much better deal for taxpayers?
Yeah, only for a short period of time. The upfront cost might be less for the taxpayer, but the long-term cost will probably end up to be more. What you have to remember is that every piece of equipment that we put in that ship is going to come from China, not from Canada. And that's why it's cheap. You can't go and put Canadian equipment in a ship built in China. There's another security issue too, and I think it would be very difficult for the Department of National Defense to go to China with its all its secret toys and say, oh, by the way, would you put them in my ship?
Sorry to break in, Peter. We're going to have to go live now to François Guimond, the Deputy Minister, who is making the announcement.
To implement those plans at 20%. Financial capability for 10%, and the remaining 10% for a value proposition. Those criteria were developed in consultation with the bidders, and the results are based exclusively on the current capabilities of the shipyards and the merits of their proposals. Les critères
of these criteria were developed in consultation with the bidders, and the results are based exclusively on the current capabilities of the shipyards, as well as the merits of their proposals.
That responding to our request for proposal demanded a great deal of time and effort and represented a significant investment on the part of the bidding shipyards. We would like to thank them for their active and very professional participation in the process. Before announcing the results, I would ask our fairness monitor, Peter Woods, to provide you with his conclusion on the fairness of the process. Peter, please.
Thank you. My name is Peter Woods. With the company Knowles Consultancy Incorporated, we were contracted to provide independent fairness monitor services for the National Shipbuilding Procurement Strategy. I have monitored the National Shipbuilding Procurement Strategy starting very early in the process, July 2010, and continued to monitor it for fairness to the present. I have had full access to everything I wanted, including meetings, emails, documents, reports, and solicitations, all of the proposals received from the shipyards, and all evaluation activities and meetings. I found no fairness deficiencies with the procurement strategy competitive process, including the way it was carried out. Indeed, the process has met a very high standard for all elements of procurement fairness. Among the 50 or so procurements that I have monitored for fairness over the past 10 years, it was one of the best, if not the best. We submitted our report yesterday, and I want to quote the attestation provided in the report. It is the opinion of the Fairness Monitor that the competitive process to select one Canadian shipyard to enter into an umbrella agreement to build combat ships and another Canadian shipyard to enter into an umbrella agreement to build non-combat ships was conducted in a fair manner. In this context, fairness means decisions were made objectively, free from personal favoritism and political influence, and encompasses the elements of openness, competitiveness, transparency, and compliance. Thank you.
Thank you. Merci, Peter. I appreciate it. I will now announce the results. The successful bidder for the combat package is l'entrepreneur retenu pour le lot de travaux relatifs.
The successful bidder for the combat package is
The successful bidder for the non-combat package is l'entrepreneur retenu pour le lot de travaux relatifs.
the successful bidder for the non-combat package is
Vancouver Shipyard. It is important to state that the quality of the bids received was strong, and that the two successful bidders submitted the very best proposals. The next steps in the implementation of the strategy is the finalization of the strategic sourcing arrangements, called umbrella agreements, with the selected shipyards. Upon the signing of the umbrella agreements, expected by the end of the year, work will immediately begin on negotiating individual project contracts. We expect to have these in place by mid-2012. My colleagues and I will be pleased to take your questions on the evaluation process. Nous serons très heureux de répondre à vos questions sur le processus d'évaluation.
My colleagues and I will be pleased to take your questions on the evaluation process. Thank you.
Just a question on from British Columbia. Why didn't the C-SPAN? How did C-SPAN fall short on its bid for the larger military contract? Can you elaborate on that?
Normally, in our processes, when successful bidders get the signal that they were the successful bidder, we always provide for an offer for a debriefing. As a matter of fact, this debriefing will be witnessed by the Fairness Monitor. This offer has already been made, I'm pretty sure, Mr. Ring, as a result of the shipyards being informed before this press conference. And this is at the time where people will get detailed results on their evaluation and where they had points and lesser points. So I would leave it at that at the time being. And the first step is to debrief the shipyards.
And just as a follow-up, can you elaborate on that particular, the $8 billion contract? How many jobs would it create over what period of time?
We're going to bring our panel back in. Retired Vice Admiral Peter Cairns and Montreal business correspondent for Les Affaires, Diane Bernard. Diane, I want to start with you. Davy's completely locked out here. The big winner is Irving. What is the reaction going to be in Quebec City?
Well, I can tell you about my reaction. As a citizen, I want to believe that this has been all done in fairness and transparency. So that's what I hear. As a Quebecer, I'm torn because on one side, I'm disappointed because that was, as far as I'm concerned, the only chance of Davies to get back to life. Even though the owners are saying, and they were saying that this afternoon, the new owners, that they would keep the shipyard alive. But I have to admit that I have very strong doubts that this shipyard, which had 6 different owners in 20 years and is plagued with a stroke of bad luck, will have a chance to survive after this disappointing announcement. But like I said,
Peter,
as a citizen.
Peter, what's your reaction to the decision?
Well, I think the choices were very good. I'm delighted for the two shipyards chosen, and I'm very disappointed for Davie, because Davie is a very good shipyard also. Unfortunately, someone has to lose. I'm hoping that that yard will still be able to continue on and survive in the future. I don't know what the scoring was. I think we all will learn what the scoring was in the next little while. But I'm happy for the winners and very sorry for the loser.
Peter, will Quebec, though, and Montreal in particular, benefit here in terms of the systems that go into these boats and the technology? And I think of SNC-Lavalin, that was in fact one of the backers of the Davies shipyard. These contracts, of specifically the $25 billion to the new frigates, only half of that is the actual ship. The rest is the technology and the internal components.
Well, absolutely. Every area of the country will benefit, but if you look at the Canadian Patrol Frigate program as an example, Ontario and Quebec were the major benefactors of that program. So I don't see any difference in this. There are the majority of the high technology computer and systems manufacturers in this country are located in Ontario and Quebec, and they will certainly benefit from this.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much, both of you. Diane Bérard in Montreal and Peter Cairns, President of the Shipbuilding Association of Canada. Thank you.